You know things are bad when the best thing happening to your club is a load of mostly overweight legends stick 6 goals past a load of more overweight Italian legends. But that's what happened at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium yesterday, and fun it was to watch too. Meanwhile, reports suggest Spurs are looking to spend over £150 million on 5 new players, including some exciting young starlets this summer, and new reputable suggestions that 2 of Tottenham's most senior players could potentially be leaving the club. All this and more on today's daily Tottenham Hotspur news. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Wherever you are, please do press like. Please do subscribe to the channel. Trying to get to 15,000 subscribers. Only about 500 away now, guys. So if you like Tottenham content and transfer content over the summer when the window opens again, please do give me a subscribe. But let's get started. And as I mentioned, quite a lot of reports about Tottenham's transfer possibilities this summer. Johan Lang clearly doing his business and trying to get some early deals done, or at least some conversations started. The latest being that we're reportedly interested in signing 23-year-old Danish winger Gustav Isaksen from Lazio. 23 years old, he's valued at 40 million euros by the Rome club. Now, Lazio, of course, are in the Europa League still, as are Tottenham, and a potential semi-final awaits against the club who really first came to my attention when they were interested in Paul Gascoigne, my idol, when I was a kid. And eventually, despite him getting injured in the biggest game of his career against Nottingham Forest in the 1991 FA Cup final, Gazza, a year later, did make that move for £5.5 million from Spurs to Lazio, and he became an absolute club legend in Italy. He can't buy a drink in Italy, he says, because of how loved he was by Lazio. Gustav Isaksen looks about the right age, kind of in terms of our transfer strategy. And we've had success with Danish players before, haven't we? Especially Christian Eriksen. So let's see what happens with that. More close to home, though, a name that has been on Tottenham's list for a long time now and is cropping up again. João Gomes, the number 6 Brazilian international at Wolves. Apparently, we're contemplating making a move for him in the summer. Wolves, who have had a poor season in and about the relegation zone, and we are interested in both Gomez and Rayan Nouri, who I talked about in a video at the back end of last week. I don't think it would be bad business to go and try and pick off some players at Wolves, who I'm sure will have some kind of rebuild after a very disappointing season. Okay, another Wonderkid that Spurs are apparently interested in. We're looking to beat Manchester United to the signing of Franco Mastantuono from River Plate in Argentina. 17 years old, attacking midfielder, and has a release clause of about £38 million written into his contract. However, Transfer Market, who are a very reputable website who know a lot about the kind of values of players, they value him at a lot less, so I'm sure there's a deal to be done. Now, I've looked into him a little bit. Mastantuono looks like a real talent. Like I said, 17 years old, plays at River Plate, central attacking midfielder. He's an Argentinian under-20 international. Rangy player, very brave on the ball, as a lot of South Americans are. Loves to play it around the corner. When he gets it into his feet, not afraid to flick it around the corner, which is something that Ange Postecoglou really looks to do as part of his style of play. Get people playing 1 and 2 touch. He loves a trick. Probably needs to bulk up a little bit, Mastantuono, because he's obviously, like I said, still 17 years old. But in terms of the strength and physicality required for the Premier League, probably not quite there yet. But he makes really good runs, got a lovely left foot, very good vision. Doesn't mind a little through ball into the strikers, good weight on those as well. And I'm not sure if a lot of you will love this, but he reminds me of a bit of a taller, young Eric Lamela. Kind of similar vibes, left foot very strong on his left side. Doesn't really like to use his right, cuts in from the right-hand side. Good crosser of the ball as well. He's played, at the age of 17, 47 times for River Plate already. That shows real talent. 5 goals and 4 assists for the Argentinian giant. So, again, in terms of the strategy of what Tottenham are trying to do when bringing in transfer business, this is exactly the kind of player that doesn't surprise me when we get linked with him, because it's almost about getting them before the bigger clubs by which I mean the clubs who are willing to pay more money on wages and more transfer fees. It's about getting them in before they sniff them out. So far, I'm going to say this, so far we haven't had much success with Alejo Valise, who we brought over from South America, but I think Tottenham will continue to try and invest in the best young talent. And Mastantuono looks like a really exciting young player. Meanwhile, back over in Europe, Spurs, Liverpool, Manchester United and Newcastle reportedly interested in signing 24-year-old German striker Jonathan Burkhardt from SV Mainz in Germany. It's interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think about Tottenham and trying to sign strikers, particularly strikers of that kind of age, 24, 25, where they're heading towards their prime. To me, that seems like a less likely signing. Because we've got Dominic Solanke, it strikes me that similarly to what happened when we had Harry Kane, we're going to be buying strikers who are going to come into the club realistically knowing that they're just going to be backup for Solanke, because Solanke is such a great number 9, works so hard, suits the system, etc., etc. So a 24-year-old German striker who's coming into his prime probably seems a little unlikely. Why would he join Spurs over some of the other bigger clubs who are going to pay him more wages, by which I mean Liverpool, Manchester United. I mean, even Newcastle under Saudi are going to pay him more wages. Just to potentially play backup. It seems more likely that we would go for a younger striker, maybe bring someone in with a bit more talent to grow into and who can learn from Solanke. I don't know, I could be wrong, but a lot of our other transfer rumours seem to suggest that that is the more likely option. And even though he's not a striker, I think this next player is a relevant person to bring up at this point, because Spurs apparently now leading Man United, who have come into the race for Tyler Dibling from Southampton. The wide forward is being offered about £50 million from Southampton. Spurs want to pay about half of that, as they see him as a future prospect, as opposed to somebody who is fully ready to play every game right now. Obviously, Tyler Dibling, not a number 9, probably could play as a false 9, but he's a very exciting wide forward. Reminds me a little bit of Chris Waddle. For those of you a little bit older, I mean, I've already talked about Paul Gascoigne in this video, so why not go the whole hog and talk about Chris Waddle, who was incredible for Spurs in the late 80s. Kind of wore his socks by his ankles, loved to drop a shoulder, had a kind of surprising turn of pace, could go inside and out, loved using his left foot and his right, brilliant free kick taker, brilliant crosser, could score goals from unbelievable angles. And it strikes me that at the age of, I think Dibling's only 17, 18 himself, he could really turn into a kind of Chris Waddle-esque player. And that's why I think Spurs are sniffing around him. A real talent. Premier League experience this season with Southampton, albeit in a disappointing season for them. I think Spurs have had him on the list for a long time, so it would be kind of disappointing if we didn't get him over the line. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion about bringing him in January, but I think Southampton wanted to do a deal where if we bought him in January, we'd let him stay there on loan for the rest of the season. Tottenham needed players in right then, so that's why that didn't happen. But if Man United are in a race with Spurs for him, I'd like to think that Tottenham are ahead of that, because we've had him on our list for a long time. We've spoken to him, spoken to his agent. I'm sure we've spoken to Southampton as well. And realistically, right now, in terms of the rebuild, I do think Tottenham, even though we're just below them in the league, I think we are further ahead than Manchester United. And the pressure that's involved in playing at Old Trafford, playing for that club right now, is just so huge. And I think he'd get more opportunities realistically at Spurs. So I'm hopeful that Dibling will become a Tottenham player this summer. Another exciting young English talent from the Championship this time is Sunderland's Chris Rigg. And Spurs, apparently, according to some reports, have submitted a bid of £38 million for the 17-year-old central midfielder from Sunderland. That seems a little high for me, even though he has played 34 times for Sunderland in the Championship this season. At the age of 17, that's incredible. 4 goals, 1 assist. He's played in all of the England age groups. And of course, there is that English club to English club, English player tax. So you do have to pay more, similarly to how we had to pay nearly £50 million in the end for Brennan Johnson. But the reality is Brennan Johnson had played Premier League football, whereas Chris Rigg, although he's looked incredible at such a young age for Sunderland, it's only in the Championship. So I'd be surprised if it went up to £38 million. Maybe it's more like 20 odd million pounds with some add-ons. So if he really fulfills his potential, it could go up to that kind of price. That seems more realistic to me. But like I said, 4 goals, 1 assist this season. Really exciting young player. Not afraid to beat a man in midfield. Little nutmeg there. Shows his bravery on the ball. Good in the air. Quick feet. Really good finisher with his left foot as well. Doesn't panic under pressure. a strongly left-sided player, again, a bit like Mastantuono. But for a 17-year-old, from what I've seen, Chris Rigg has an incredible football brain and a bit of bite in the tackle, which makes me think he'd look really exciting alongside Lucas Bergvall, who, again, all of those things, all of those talents I've talked about with Rigg, Bergvall has. A little bit more right-sided, obviously, but also a little bit of bite in the tackle, not afraid to get involved in a 50-50, and you need that in the Premier League. And I think if Chris Rigg did come to Spurs, once he's acclimatised to the top league, I could see him really flourishing. I don't know about you guys, a lot of people complaining about Tottenham going for young players at the moment, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think Tottenham have to be known as a club where young players, young talent has a chance to flourish, to get chances in the Premier League and to grow, the same way that Lucas Bergvall has done. It's only taken him about 8-9 months. So I don't think we should look down on the fact that we're trying to get the best young talent and certainly the best young European talent and where possible English talent into the club. I think it's the right way. I think it's the chance that we have to really grow a young, exciting squad together to push on in the coming years. I know it hasn't worked out this season. We're in the middle of a difficult rebuild. I get all of that. But I do think in terms of a long-term strategy, it's the right thing to do. And more reports this weekend linking us to Middlesbrough midfielder Hayden Hackney, and that suits that strategy as well. The England under-21 international, widely thought of as one of the best midfielders outside of the Premier League, and is said to be valued at around £20 million by Middlesbrough. Hackney has been on our list for a long time, even way back to when we were linked with Morgan Rogers as well. And as I said in a video last week, I really feel like we missed out on Morgan Rogers, letting him go to Aston Villa. I think that was a mistake. And therefore, when we're being linked with these incredibly talented young English players in the Championship, I would say let's try and bring them in this time. Let's not let another club snap them up and kind of rub it in our faces when we see how well they play in the Premier League. Let me know what you think, though, of Hackney and of Chris Rigg particularly. I'd be really keen to know, especially if any of you guys watch more of the Championship than I do. I think they look like young, exciting talents, and we should bring them in to the club to grow alongside the likes of Archie Gray, the likes of Lucas Bergvall, etc., etc. Okay, some news then, as I mentioned in the title, on some of our more senior players and potentially leaving the club. Obviously, we've been talking for a long time now, since the link started happening between Christian Romero and Real Madrid, probably a year, 18 months ago. But the latest is that Tottenham will look to offload Christian Romero in the summer if he refuses to sign a new contract. Real Madrid still showing interest in the Argentinian, who is one of a number of names being considered at centre-back by the Spanish Giants, alongside Wilson Saliba, actually. Wilson Saliba? What's his first name? Not sure what Saliba's first name is. William Saliba, that's it. From South Woolwich, Arsenal. Had a little bit of a mental block there. Of course, Romero would be tempted by Real Madrid. I get that. But interesting is some of the other reports coming out about Christian Romero, talking about how he apparently is deeply upset by the way Tottenham's medical team handled his injury. If you haven't heard about this, he had to go to the Argentinian national team's physios to get his thigh injury sorted in the end, and he puts all of the credit on him getting back to fitness with them. I mean, it's not unlike Christian Romero to be more positive about Argentina than he seems to be about Spurs, so that's no surprise. But some of the conflicting reports as well are that Christian Romero is incredibly positive about Ange Postecoglou, and I think I saw this weekend that he reposted or liked a social media post that came back with the quote again that saying that Romero would leave the club if Ange Postecoglou was sacked as manager. So that's an interesting one that might add some extra pressure to Daniel Levy's decision on Ange Postecoglou further down the line, because I think we've all been somewhat in agreement that if Ange doesn't now go to the final and win, or at least go to the final but probably win the Europa League, then it's more than likely that he will not stay in his post for past next summer. But if one of the leadership group, Christian Romero, and such an important player, says to Levy, listen, I'll stay and I'll sign a new contract if Ange Postecoglou stays as well, then that puts Levy under a lot of pressure, doesn't it? In terms of that recovery from injury, Romero said the following: I'm grateful that the national team's medical team was able to get me out of that bad moment. So that's a little bit quite cutting, isn't it, really? A little bit loaded, a bit of a loaded statement at the Tottenham medical team. Of course, there have been reports in the last few months that Big Ange has been looking to make huge changes to the Spurs medical department, and what Christian Romero has said about his recovery won't have helped that one little bit in terms of those people who are currently in the medical department. I think we've all seen those LinkedIn adverts as well. People, Spurs looking for more people in their medical department and a head of sports science ahead of medical at one point as well. Meanwhile, reports came out yesterday that Atletico Madrid have asked Spurs about conditions for a potential deal for Rodrigo Bentancur. They've had contacts to test the ground for a potential deal this summer, but whether there have been any concrete negotiations is currently unsure. Now, the reason this fascinates me is because I think Bentancur has been in pretty poor form recently. I don't know what you think. Let me know what you reckon in the comments. I do still think he's a great player. I just wonder whether he perfectly suits Postecoglou's style, or maybe it's more that since his injuries, he hasn't looked quite as press-proof as he did. What I loved about Bentancur when he first came into the club was his bravery to come and get the ball in that kind of sixth position from the goalkeeper or from the back line, take it on the half-turn, even when he was being heavily pressed by an opposition midfielder, and he'd always get past them. But now he seems a little bit more tentative on the ball and certainly more willing to go backwards and sideways than he is to really take a risk on the half turn. And as a result, I think a lot of the Tottenham fan base have been saying maybe it's time for Bentancur to leave the club. I can, however, see him doing incredibly well for Atletico Madrid under Diego Simeone. He looks like exactly his type of player. I think Simeone would get a lot of bite out of Bentancur that he really shows when he plays for Uruguay. But he's kind of lost a bit of that for Spurs. He's a bit late into all the tackles these days, and certainly it's been that way more since his injuries. So it is a deal I could imagine happening in the same way that Simeone likes Conor Gallagher. You know, good player on the ball, but a worker, a real worker bee, and Bentancur's like that as well. So I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you be happy for Bentancur to join Atletico Madrid? And if so, what kind of money would you want Spurs to try and get from Atletico for him? I would say if we got £40 million for Bentancur, and we could reinvest that in maybe some of those young English talents that I've talked about, as well as then also trying to get in somebody or a couple of players who are kind of box fresh and oven ready for the Premier League, the likes of Eza. Some people have been talking about Adam Wharton from Crystal Palace as well. If we could invest some of that money into what it would take to get those players in, then maybe that's a deal I would be willing to do. The transfer Don, Fabrizio Romano, was asked what Spurs think of Mathys Tel. He gave the following quote. He said, "For Mathys Tel, Spurs are very happy with the boy, with his attitude, with the potential they see in him, and that's why they were fighting for weeks to sign him back in January. The indication remains that they trust him also for the future." Well, let's not forget that Mathys Tel's situation is not an obligation to buy in the summer. So Mathys Tel can decide himself whether he wants to stay at Tottenham or whether he wants to go back to Bayern Munich. And if he indicates that he'd like to stay at Tottenham, then it's up to Tottenham to decide whether they want to sign him for, I think, €55 million. There's been quite a bit of negativity around Tel so far from the Tottenham fan base, I think because he hasn't ripped it up and scored loads of goals, maybe in a similar way to how Asensio and Marcus Rashford have for Aston Villa. But you've got to bear in mind, Asensio and Rashford are on huge wages. They are proven elite footballers who are in their prime, whereas Mathys Tel is a 19-year-old footballer who's not played a great deal of football, certainly in terms of starting. He barely started any games for Bayern Munich, and now he's come into Spurs, starting in the number 9 position in the Premier League, and he clearly wasn't ready for that. But I've seen enough in some of his touches and some of his play when trying to bring other people into the game, but also with his attitude, trying to protect Ange Postecoglou after he got in that little set two with fans after the Fulham game. I like the look of Tel, and I think he's another young, exciting player that we should bring in to the club. Also, some reports this weekend that Spurs, alongside South Woolwich, Arsenal and Newcastle, interested in Archie Gray's 16-year-old brother, Harry Gray, from Leeds. Some reports suggesting that he is just as talented, if not maybe more talented than Archie Gray. I doubt that. Archie Gray is an unbelievable, potentially generational talent who could play centre-back or centre midfield for years. I really like him as a centre-back from everything I've seen. I have to say, when he's got the entire game in front of him, Archie Gray, I think he looks unbelievably comfortable on the ball. He reads the game well, and a good defender for someone of 18 years old as well. Harry Gray, a couple of years younger. Listen, I think if there's a deal to be done there, and he's incredibly talented, then bring him in, because also he can go and live with Archie Gray, and they can help each other as they acclimatise to living down in London and playing for a big club like Spurs. Let's see what happens. I certainly don't mind that we're being linked with these very exciting young talents. Okay, just before South Korea drew 1-1 with Oman, our captain Son Heung-min did a press conference where he was asked about his situation at Spurs. He said, "I've repeatedly said that I'm in excellent physical condition. I believe I'm in the best shape I've ever been. Since we've had so many matches, I think my club manager made those decisions to create better situations," by which he means I think he was asked why he's been on the bench quite a lot. Personally, I feel great and there are no issues at all. I just want to emphasize that I'm maintaining a very good condition. Yeah, listen, I don't disagree with Son. I'm sure he is in great condition, but he's just had to play too many games, too much travelling, too many games. He's 32, nearly 33 years old now. We need to manage his minutes, and I'm sure when he is completely free of fatigue, then I think we'll see the best of him again, and hopefully that can be in our Europa League run for the rest of this season. We haven't heard from Radu Dragoshin's agent for a while, Rent-A-Mouth, Big Mouth, so obviously it was time for him. His name is Florian Mania, and he was giving some quotes about Radu and Spurs. He says, Radu misses Italy. Who knows, he might even come back in the future. But at the moment, the strongest league is the Premier League, so it's hard to say that it's not a pleasure to play there. Yes, Napoli were interested. I spoke to their president, who was very kind. But it was too late. Tottenham had already started negotiations a month earlier, and then Bayern Munich also got involved. In the end, the boy chose Spurs. All the players in the world would like to be trained by Conte to improve. Conte is, of course, Napoli manager now. He's a stratospheric level coach, but for now I can't say anything because Dragoshin has a long contract with Tottenham. Meanwhile, before the first round of international matches, Sweden boss John Dahl Thomas, an ex-Newcastle player, by the way, he was asked about Lucas Bergvall, who apparently picked up a bit of an illness. He said, we're one player short. We'll see how he feels. He has a cold. He's not in top form. He could have maybe been a little bit more involved, but there's no reason to take risks. Meanwhile, the French under-21 manager, Gerald Baticle, was asked about his thoughts on Mathys Tel. He says he has the mentality and appetite of a real goal scorer. He's a player with great potential who needs to develop his professionalism to establish himself. He must show that he's efficient and effective to reach even higher levels. There's still work to be done, but the foundation is very interesting. Then the French under-21s went on to draw 4-4, I think, with England. With Wilson Odobert absolutely ripping it up. 2 assists, and he was driving and actually making Manchester City's fullback / midfielder Rico Lewis look decidedly average. So great to see Wilson Odobert getting some more minutes into his legs and getting some assists. Mikey Moore claimed an assist as well for the England under-19s as they beat Wales 2-0 in their UEFA under-19 qualification game. Mikey Moore came off the bench in 72 minutes and then made his assist 12 minutes later. Shame to see Mikey Moore not starting that. I wonder if with Mikey Moore, realistically, he just hasn't fully recovered from that illness that he suffered from. Ange would never say exactly what the illness was. I reckon it was probably glandular fever, and that's one that does keep you out for months, and then the fatigue stays with you for quite a long time after. It's quite common amongst teenagers, so maybe I'm not hugely surprised that he's not starting games at the moment. And meanwhile, I'm sure you saw this last bit of news. Girona have confirmed that Bryan Hill underwent surgery this morning on the lateral collateral ligament of his right knee, and he'll be sidelined for 4 to 5 months. I'm pretty sure Girona have an obligation to buy Hill, and that is why I think Girona probably did that surgery rather than him coming back to Spurs for that. Although let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's an obligation to buy. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. Please, once again, do press that like button. Do press subscribe if you haven't already for daily Tottenham content and transfer content as the window opens. It's only a month or 2 away now, so we can at least get some excitement back into us with some of those transfer rumours that do the rounds. Also, please do listen on the podcast platforms, be that Apple or Spotify. Just go over there, type in the Spurred On podcast, give me a subscribe or a follow there. Try and enjoy your Monday, guys. Cheers.